When family becomes suspects, the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan. Two young children vanish in the middle of the night. No witnesses, no evidence, no trace. Just silence. This is the story of Lilly and Jack Sullivan, 6 and 4 years old, who disappeared from their Nova Scotia home on May 2nd, 2025. What began as a desperate search through forests, rivers, and neighborhoods has now turned into a mystery clouded by suspicion. As the days passed with no answers, investigators turned their eyes inward, toward the people closest to the children, their own family. Parents questioned again and again, the grandmother calling for a public inquiry. Relatives interviewed, some even strapped to polygraph tests. Tonight, we break down the family dynamics, the interviews, and the shadows of doubt that hang over those who were supposed to protect Lilly and Jack. Could the truth about their disappearance lie within the very home they vanished from? Thank you for helping us cross 100 subscribers. We remain committed to bringing you the evidence and truth behind these haunting cases. Keep subscribing and sharing until we reach 1,000. Together, we can shine a stronger light on stories like this. It was the quiet hours of May 2nd, 2025, when Pictou County, Nova Scotia awoke to a nightmare. Inside a modest home, two young siblings, 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack, vanished without a sound. The initial theory was unsettling yet deceptively simple. The children may have slipped unnoticed through a sliding glass door. Perhaps curiosity led them outside. Perhaps it was a restless night, a moment of childhood impulse. But even in the earliest hours, questions arose. If they had wandered out, where were the signs? Where were the footprints in the soft earth? Where were the broken twigs, the rustle in the grass, or the discarded toy that could have marked their path? When the disappearance was reported, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police wasted no time. What began as a local search quickly grew into one of the most extensive operations the province had ever seen. Officers, emergency responders, and trained search and rescue specialists converged on the area. Dogs were brought in, noses to the ground, trained to pick up even the faintest trace of a scent. Drones circled above, scanning the dense tree cover and wetlands. Helicopters swept across vast stretches of land and water, their searchlights piercing through the night. Boats moved along nearby rivers and lakes, dragging and scanning for any sign of disturbance. On the ground, the community responded with an outpouring of unity. Neighbors, friends, and strangers from across Nova Scotia joined the effort. They formed search lines, walking shoulder to shoulder, calling the children's names again and again, hoping for even the faintest cry in return. The forests echoed with shouts of "Lilly! Jack!" But each call was met with silence. Days passed. Each sunrise renewed determination, and each sunset carried a heavier weight of dread. The search stretched through fields, along riverbanks, through abandoned buildings, and across rural backroads. Every possible lead was pursued, every corner checked, but the results remained the same. Nothing. No footprints in the mud, no scraps of clothing snagged on branches, no small belongings dropped in haste. For investigators, this absence was chilling. In most missing child cases, there are traces, something to suggest direction, to hint at possibility. But here, it was as if Lilly and Jack had been erased. By May 7th, just 5 days later, the official large-scale search was scaled back. Specialized teams continued to work behind the scenes, but the silence left behind by the failed search was deafening. For the public, grief began to mix with suspicion. How could two children slip out of a home and leave no trace? Could they really have wandered away unnoticed? Or had something else happened, something far darker, that no one wanted to admit? As the search effort quieted, attention began to shift. The mystery of Lilly and Jack Sullivan was no longer simply about where they had gone. It was about who, if anyone, might know more than they were saying.
And for investigators, that meant turning their attention closer to home.
When children go missing, the first instinct of any community is compassion, to search, to hope, to bring them home. But as the days passed in Pictou County, compassion began to mingle with unease. With no signs in the woods, no tracks in the mud, no belongings found along the riverside, the most haunting question grew louder. If the children hadn't simply wandered away, then what happened inside the home that night? For investigators, it was a turning point. Missing child cases almost always begin with the inner circle. Parents, guardians, and close relatives are the first to be interviewed, not because they are automatically guilty, but because statistics tell a painful truth. In many cases, the danger comes from within. The Sullivan household soon became the epicenter of scrutiny. Officers returned, not just to search the property, but to study it. They examined the sliding glass door. Was it really left unlocked? Could two small children have opened it without help? They walked the grounds again, looking for anything missed in the first frantic hours. Every detail, no matter how small, became evidence to be weighed. The family members themselves were questioned at length. Each was asked to recount the night of May 1st into the early morning of May 2nd. Who last saw Lily and Jack before bed? What time did they check on them? When did they notice the children were gone? Inconsistencies, even small ones, drew attention. Times that didn't quite match, details that shifted slightly in retellings. For investigators, these weren't proof of guilt, but they were red flags that demanded deeper probing. The interviews were not just about answers, they were about reactions. Law enforcement observed body language, tone of voice, the gaps between words. Were the family members distressed, cooperative, defensive, evasive? Every response or lack thereof was quietly noted. Meanwhile, in the eyes of the community, suspicion began to settle uncomfortably over the Sullivan family. Neighbors who had once joined search lines now whispered doubts. Online discussions grew, dissecting every statement from the family, every public appearance, every detail released in press briefings. Some believed the family's grief was genuine, that they were victims of a tragedy no parent should ever endure. Others, however, couldn't shake the possibility that someone within the household knew more than they were admitting. This was the moment when the Sullivan case began to fracture, no longer a united community searching for lost children, but a divided public torn between sympathy and suspicion. For investigators, the shift was necessary. Until evidence pointed elsewhere, the family would remain the heart of the inquiry. Because if Lily and Jack did not simply vanish into the night, then the answers, however painful, might lie within the very walls of their own home.
As investigators narrowed their focus, the spotlight inevitably fell on Lily and Jack's parents. In missing child cases, this is not unusual. Parents are often the first to be questioned, their lives placed under a microscope. But in this case, the intensity was even greater because there were no alternative leads, no strangers seen lurking, no vehicles caught on cameras, no footprints pointing outward. The silence around the case pushed all attention back inside the Sullivan home. The first question investigators asked was painfully simple. How could two small children, just 6 and 4 years old, slip out of a home unnoticed in the middle of the night? Both parents explained the same story. The sliding glass door must have been left unlocked. It was a plausible theory, one investigators did not dismiss outright, but doubts began to rise. 6-year-old Lily was old enough to know about the dangers of wandering outside at night. 4-year-old Jack was too small to get far without leaving signs. If they truly walked away, why had there been no trace after days of the most intensive search operations Nova Scotia had seen? Police began reviewing the parents' actions on the night of May 1st. Who put the children to bed? At what time? Were there any disturbances that evening? Could anyone verify their timeline? The answers they gave were consistent on the surface, but under closer questioning, small gaps began to show. Times that seemed vague, moments of uncertainty, explanations that felt rehearsed rather than natural. The way the parents responded to media also drew mixed reactions. Some neighbors and online commentators noted how one parent appeared calm, even detached during interviews, while the other showed bursts of emotion that seemed, to some, exaggerated. Was this grief playing out in different personalities or signs of deeper truths being concealed? Behind the scenes, detectives dug deeper. Phone records, text messages, financial activity, and movements in the days leading up to the disappearance all came under review. Family dynamics were quietly investigated. Were there any disputes, pressures, or stressors in the household that could explain what had happened? At the same time, the public's patience began to thin. Online forums erupted with speculation. Some pointed directly at the parents, convinced that no one else could be responsible. Others defended them, reminding everyone that grief shows itself in unpredictable ways and that suspicion could destroy an already broken family. Still, the parents remained under the heaviest scrutiny, and investigators knew that the answers to the Sullivan mystery, whether of guilt, innocence, or something in between, might depend on whether their stories could withstand the relentless pressure of truth. The chilling possibility grew louder with each passing day. What if Lilly and Jack had never left that home alive?
As pressure mounted on the parents, investigators widened their circle of inquiry. The reality is this: in cases of child disappearance, the danger, if not from strangers, is often close, sometimes painfully close. Extended family members, too, became part of the investigation. Relatives were interviewed one by one. Some lived nearby, others visited frequently, and each was asked the same core questions. When was the last time you saw Lilly and Jack? Did you notice anything unusual in the days leading up to May 1st? Did the children ever express fear, hesitation, or reluctance around anyone in the family? On the surface, most answers aligned with a picture of ordinary family life: smiles, visits, playful interactions. But investigators knew that appearances could not be taken at face value. Inconsistent timelines, vague memories, or overly defensive reactions were carefully recorded. The grandparents, who had been publicly vocal about their grief, gave interviews that painted a picture of confusion and devastation. Yet even they were not above suspicion. Investigators quietly considered whether family conflicts, generational tensions, or hidden disputes might have played a role. Aunts and uncles were questioned about their movements on the night of the disappearance. Where were they between May 1st and May 2nd? Could their alibis be verified? Each detail was weighed against phone records, surveillance cameras, and digital footprints. One of the most challenging aspects for detectives was navigating family dynamics. Behind closed doors, families often have unspoken tensions, resentments, financial struggles, or disputes that never appear in public. To uncover these, investigators leaned on interviews with neighbors, school staff, and community members who might have noticed signs the family themselves tried to hide. Meanwhile, the public conversation became harsher. Online discussions spiraled into theories involving extended relatives. Some speculated that a family member might have accidentally harmed the children and then covered it up. Others suggested more sinister motives, linking the case to custody disputes, inheritance issues, or hidden conflicts. Though none of these theories had been proven, the effect was undeniable. Suspicion was no longer confined to the parents. Now, the entire Sullivan family lived under a shadow of doubt, each member carrying the weight of grief and quiet accusation. For the investigators, this was a delicate balance. On one hand, every relative was a potential suspect. On the other, any misstep risked alienating the very people who might hold the key to the children's fate. In the end, the probing into extended family did not yield a breakthrough, but it deepened the sense of unease. Because the more investigators looked within, the more the case felt like a closed circle, where answers were trapped inside and no one, yet, was willing to break the silence. Amid the growing tension, the children's grandmother, Belynda Gray, has become a prominent and vocal figure.
In a recent, emotionally charged plea, she remarked, "My heart tells me these babies are gone." Her grief is matched by mounting frustration. She is now demanding a public inquiry into how the investigation has been handled. Her words have a twofold effect. They amplify the anguish of a grandparent speaking out, while also fueling deeper scrutiny, both of law enforcement's methods and the family's internal dynamics. If her trust in the process is eroding, what does that suggest about what's being uncovered or withheld? As days turned into weeks, the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan spread far beyond their quiet community. Local news reports quickly gave way to national coverage, and before long, the children's faces were everywhere, on posters, in television interviews, across social media feeds. The urgency to bring them home became not just a family matter, but a national conversation. With the spotlight came pressure. The public wanted answers. They wanted arrests, suspects, and explanations. But as police remained tight-lipped and no breakthroughs were announced, frustration began to turn into suspicion. The first targets of this suspicion were, inevitably, the parents. Viewers scrutinized every second of their interviews. Were they crying enough? Were their words too rehearsed? Did their body language betray guilt? Clips were replayed endlessly, dissected frame by both professional analysts and self-appointed internet detectives. Extended family members also found themselves caught in the glare. Some online commentators pointed to a relative's awkward phrasing during an interview as evidence of dishonesty. Others highlighted conflicting details between family members' accounts, suggesting that someone was hiding something. The internet, once a tool to spread awareness and mobilize searches, became a double-edged sword. Theories multiplied, some plausible, others wildly speculative. Strangers thousands of miles away felt confident enough to assign blame, creating narratives that blurred the line between fact and fiction. For investigators, this was both a blessing and a burden. On one hand, media coverage kept the children's faces in the public eye, increasing the chances of valuable tips. On the other hand, the flood of rumors risked contaminating the case. Calls to tip lines skyrocketed, but many were based on hearsay or conspiracy theories sparked by online chatter. Meanwhile, the Sullivan family lived under constant surveillance, not from police, but from the public. Neighbors whispered, community members second-guessed every move. Even a trip to the grocery store could ignite speculation. Why are they acting so normal? Why aren't they doing more? Some in the community defended the family, urging compassion and patience. Others were relentless, insisting the truth was already hidden within those closest to the children. The weight of media scrutiny became its own character in the story, a force shaping perception, fueling suspicion, and tightening the noose of public judgment. For investigators, the challenge was clear: to separate the noise of speculation from the signal of evidence. Because beneath the chaos of headlines and hashtags, 2 small children were still missing. And the longer the spotlight stayed on the family without answers, the more the public began to believe the unthinkable: that Lilly and Jack's disappearance was not the work of strangers, but of someone within their own circle. For weeks, investigators combed through interviews, phone records, and physical evidence, searching for cracks in the family's accounts. On the surface, every family member claimed the same thing: Lilly and Jack were safe at home until suddenly they weren't. But the deeper detectives dug, the less the story seemed to add up. One of the first breakthroughs came from the timeline of events. A family member reported seeing the children late in the evening of May 1st. Another insisted they were last spotted earlier in the afternoon. Though the discrepancy might seem minor, detectives knew that such inconsistencies could unravel entire narratives. If the timeline was fractured, someone wasn't telling the truth. Digital evidence added another layer of contradiction. Cell phone pings revealed movements that didn't align with statements given during initial interviews. While some family members claimed they were at home all evening, their devices suggested otherwise. Investigators didn't reveal these findings publicly, but they carefully noted each contradiction, building a quiet case against the reliability of family testimony. Another significant detail emerged inside the home itself. Forensic teams found traces of activity in the children's room that did not match the timeline the family provided. A window left ajar, objects out of place, and faint traces of movement suggested that either the children or someone else had been in their room later than claimed. Neighbors, too, added to the confusion. One reported hearing noises late at night, voices raised, perhaps in argument. Another mentioned seeing a family vehicle leaving at an unusual hour, though the exact details were hazy. These accounts were not conclusive, but they painted a troubling picture of a household under strain. Most chilling of all were the subtle contradictions in the family's interviews. Under repeated questioning, certain relatives shifted details: what time they went to bed, when they last checked on the children, who locked the doors. Small changes, perhaps innocent under stress, but in the eyes of detectives, each inconsistency was a red flag. As these threads emerged, investigators began to tighten their circle. While no single piece of evidence proved guilt, the accumulation of contradictions suggested one disturbing possibility. Someone inside the Sullivan family knew far more than they were admitting. Yet here lay the dilemma. To the outside world, the family appeared united in grief, pleading for Lilly and Jack's safe return. But behind closed doors, detectives were quietly treating them not just as victims, but as suspects. It was a chilling realization. If the children's disappearance was not a random act, but something orchestrated or concealed by someone inside, then the key to solving this case was not out in the world, but locked inside the family itself.
It has only been a few months since Lilly and Jack Sullivan disappeared, yet the weight of their absence has shaken the entire community. Each passing day without answers feels heavier than the last, stretching time into an unbearable silence. The family, once thought to be the foundation of support, now stands at the center of suspicion. Inconsistent statements, shifting timelines, and unexplained details have created an atmosphere of doubt. What was once grief-stricken unity has become fractured tension under the public eye. The grandmother's haunting words, "My heart tells me these babies are gone," continue to echo. Her plea for a public inquiry has only intensified the pressure, raising a painful question. Is she voicing the raw pain of a grandmother, or does she hold unspoken truths that the world has yet to uncover? Neighbors have reported strange voices and suspicious vehicles. Digital records do not align with official accounts. And yet, despite the scrutiny, Lilly and Jack remain missing. The question grows louder. Could the answers lie within their very own circle of trust? Months into the investigation, the case is not faded. It is only deepened into a puzzle of contradictions, silence, and suspicion. Will justice finally break through, or will the truth remain buried behind closed doors? We want to thank you for helping us cross over 100 subscribers. It means so much to know this community is growing with people committed to truth and justice. We remain dedicated to uncovering evidence, exposing contradictions, and asking the hard questions in every case we cover. Lilly and Jack's disappearance is not just a story, it is a call for persistence, for voices that refuse to be silent. With your support, we will continue to shine light where shadows remain. Keep subscribing and sharing until we reach 1,000, because every comment, every share, and every voice matters in this search for answers. Now, we turn the question to you. Do you believe the grandmother's heartbreaking statement was pure grief, or could it be a sign that she knows more than she has revealed? And what do you think about the inconsistencies in the family's interviews? Are they nervous mistakes or part of a cover-up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.